I am a proud card carrying member of Gen X. And if you are too, then today's interview with Kavaughn Boismier, Regional Vice President of Wealth Management and Financial Planning with Meridian Credit Union, is here for you. More financially educated than baby boomers, less than millennials, Gen X has found their way into a vast range of high paying careers and have earned and spent an exuberant amount of money. Unfortunately, for many Gen Xers, family planning often happens at a whim. Balancing priorities has been a non-issue with the low interest rates and low inflation of the last 15 years, and early retirement seems like a far-off, distant dream that only comes with a large inheritance. But if there's one thing we know about Gen X, they're fierce and resilient. So let's look at some tools they can implement to get their financial picture under control. Welcome to the show, Kavaughn. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Candace. How are you?
I'm great. So I'm so excited to get into this, mostly because, I'm Gen X. So I can relate to most of what we're going to be talking about today. So if
Mhm.
there was something you wanted to say to Gen X right off the top of this interview, is there something you would tell them?
Well, I would start by saying, be still, my heart. There is hope in sight. And I share a lot of these hacks with my household in mind. So I happen to be married to a Gen Xer myself, and I'm just on the cusp of being an older millennial. And a lot of what we're going to chat about today is relevant in my household as well as many others. There's three key messages that we want to take away from today's conversation, and that's that with diligence and maybe a little bit of sacrifice, you'll get there. A lavish, luxurious life could be just around the corner. And essentially, you need it, you want it, you got to have it. A bona fide financial professional who's got your back.
I absolutely agree with you on this. I think it's hard, though, right now in the current financial environment to see silver linings. What
Mhm.
silver linings are you seeing?
So I'm seeing that, what we are experiencing today has been experienced before. And what we're doing as professionals in finances, we're tapping into maybe some of our tools, our fundamental tools from the past, prior to the financial crisis, that were very effective in managing priorities and prepping for family planning and even preparing for an early retirement. So I hope to share some of that with you today.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the tools we could put in place, because I know one of them you listed was life insurance, and I feel like people are going to immediately balk at that. Can you expand on why that is an important financial planning tool?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I commented, life insurance is not a bad word. And so especially when you are starting off with establishing a strong financial foundation, you want to take a look at this really helpful tool, and it's called the finance pyramid or financial pyramid. And this pyramid exists to establish, like I said, that strong foundation, and then to help guide you along your journey to then adding other layers of what it is to be well established financially in life. And the base of this pyramid is often life insurance. So, with the proper advice and the proper planning, you can really help to establish some safety and some security for your family in the event that the unforeseen happens and you're not able to be there and earn the income that you plan on earning for them long term.
One of the other things you talk about is having a will and a power of attorney. These are
Mhm.
two things that, again, I think that we just naturally, it's in our DNA to resist talking about our mortality. Uh,
Yes.
but the longer we put it off, the worse it gets, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the common thing is, well, I'm so young, I'm not going to pass away anytime soon. I don't need to start talking about estate planning or thinking about estate planning. But really, the fact of the matter is we're all mortal. And even though we have a longer average lifespan, the unforeseen can happen. And the primary thing is you want to ensure that if for some reason you fall ill and you're disabled, at any point in time, that you have a power of attorney in place to help identify who's going to help you manage your affairs while you're ill and unable to do it yourself. Typically, it's your spouse or a trusted family member or a friend. Same thing goes, say you're ill and you're not able to manage your affairs, but you have children. Those children still need to be cared for, and that often involves finances. On the will side, that really mortal piece is that eventually that's one thing that's guaranteed in life. We're all going to pass away. And so that will helps to determine how your children will again be cared for in the event that you're no longer here, or your family members, your spouse, whomever it is that is most important to you in your life, how they'll be cared for, and kind of most of the details that are relevant to that being settled so that doesn't get tied up.
Okay, so we're addressing sort of the big, end of life things here, but let's move back into the everyday because nobody's going anywhere today. Everybody is going to be staying right here listening to this show. Let's talk about living in the now. And I can't help but point out the financial strain we're all feeling. So how do we plan for these? You talk about deal makers and deal breakers, and I love that. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we were all raised in a financial environment at home in our upbringing, and a lot of time those values, those conversations and approaches to finance really stick with us as we become adults. And so when you are working on balancing your priorities, right, and dealing with these higher interest rates and inflation rising, you start to figure out or to learn that you have to choose, right? So what I usually recommend is definitely establish what can I live without, what can't I live without. I, for instance, cannot live without travel or shoes or, a couple of other luxuries in life. So instead of splurging on these things, 20, 30 times in the year, perhaps dial it back and say, I'm going to allow myself to splurge on something 10 times a year, 5 times a year, and establish what that is going to be. Is it going to be concerts? Is it going to be, a really good weekend away with friends? Whatever the case is, kind of pre-plan what those ideas are. And if you deviate from it a little bit, that's fine. But you got to be ready to reel yourself in if you find you're spending a little too much and it's taking away from other priorities in your household.
One of the other things you mentioned was attaining a custom financial plan. I think this is an important one to bring up because interestingly enough, Gen X, we're very attached to our technology, unlike our parents might be. We're all on social media. And there are a lot of so-called experts out there. How do we know who's really an expert in this area?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And something that I mentioned there is you really want to beware that self-proclaimed expert. And so we have a lot of friends, family members, coworkers, and people who we just cross paths with every day that make all kinds of suggestions about what we should and shouldn't do. But you really want to ensure that you're working with a professional. There are various designations and certifications that they can have. They can have a PFP designation, a CFP designation. They can have other sorts of credentials, even to the extent of a CFA designation. But what you want is to work with someone who has the ability to put a really comprehensive plan in front of you that looks at today and then the medium term. And then if you're looking long term, the long term as well.
And I think, we have a couple of minutes left, and I really would like to focus on this one piece, investing, because I hear it all the time from people talking about now is the time. That feels like a stretch again with budget. So how do we find the budget to invest, and how do we know where to invest?
Two great questions. I'm someone who's been investing for a very long time for clients and personally, and it's even a struggle sometimes personally, right? Because again, these competing priorities. And so the key is always pay yourself first. So from your paycheck, if you have the ability to have a certain percentage of your income go to either an employer plan or a non-employer plan, something that you work out with your financial professional, that is crucial. The other thing is the way you invest can also earn money for you, right? So there's these various types of instruments that exist to help you build wealth. So by holding yourself accountable to ensuring you're paying yourself first, and then also by leveraging the opportunities that exist in the market, you can end up doing quite well. The key line that I always like to drive home is it's time in the market, not timing the market. But right now where we're at is you actually have the opportunity to take advantage of a dip. And when these dips happen, it's like real estate. It's like buying a house for a low price. If that housing market goes down, we're in a similar environment right now. So it's really a great time, even though it seems like there's so much uncertainty.
So it's a buyer's market essentially right now for investing.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did an interview with Carrie Anderson about retirement. So I hope all the Gen X listeners who are approaching the upper end of that, nearing retirement, will go listen to that. I know that you have it up on your site under Her Sense, and that I also have it up on podcast, so people can go listen to that. But for more on specifically financial planning for Gen X, where can people
Mhm.
go to connect with a Meridian Credit Union advisor?
We have the ability to go over the bios of our various advisors with you if you just visit meridiancu.ca/wealth.
Okay. And I just want to also emphasize, you guys always share good information on your social channels. So that's at Meridian CU, I believe, on most channels, or Meridian Credit Union.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was incredibly helpful.
Thank you for having me.